NDPA presents the Water Safety Champion Podcast.
Welcome back to the next episode of the NDPA Water Safety Champion Podcast. My name is Adam Katchmarchi, the CEO of NDPA, and I am operating solo again today. I still haven't gotten a hold of our scheduling department to find out what happens, because I don't know what happens when I get left alone and go rogue and things like that. They tell me I need a babysitter sometimes, but normally joined by one half of the water safety odd couple, but apparently neither of them were available today, and our scheduling department was like, Adam's got to get some podcast recordings done. So here we are solo today, but very excited to be joined by our water safety champion for this episode, Melissa McGarvey with British Swim School. Melissa is definitely fitting of the definition of a water safety champion with all her work, both with British Swim Schools and supporting Learn to Swim water safety initiatives, both I should say on the North American continent and globally. So welcome, Melissa. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm great. Excited to be here and talk all things water safety, which I feel like we do all the time, but now we just get to bring in all your listeners to the conversation.
I know that could go one way or the other, because I mean, you and I have some very interesting water safety discussions sometimes.
Let's remember that this is being recorded, Melissa. That's what we have to remember.
Absolutely. That's why we have the editing power. So Melissa, let's start off. What is Melissa's water story?
Well, that is a great question, because, you know, I think I love the question because I've often posed it to as many people as I can, because I think it's really important that everybody remembers that they do have a water story. And I find that super impactful, that, you know, you can really ask that question to anybody. And my water story actually it's very interesting and a little ironic. So I actually started my experience in the water at the age of 6 months old, which would have been September of 1981. So there's a picture of Liz McGarvey in the water with me doing the whole blow in the face before you put them under the water. And a couple years after I started with British Swim School. So I started with British Swim School in 2017. And a couple of years after I started, I found out that the first lesson that our founder, Rita Goldberg, taught was in September of 1981.
Oh, really?
And so she started British Swim School in September of 1981. That is the first lesson she taught at her home. She built a pool in England in her, I think it was her basement. And so she's got a wonderful water story, but I just thought it was so ironic that my first swim lesson was actually the first lesson that British Swim School taught. And this was years after I joined, like I said. So that's actually my, you know, the first going to the local community pool and doing that lesson with my mom. And then, I think about the water story in so many different ways, but now working for a franchise company and, you know, not really remembering that I had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I guess you could say, but I was teaching kids out of my backyard pool how to swim and dive. And I remember my parents at one point being like, Melissa, who are all these kids here? And I'm like, oh, their families are paying me to teach their kids to swim. And they were like, well, that may have been something we should have talked about, but okay, I like your initiative. So I just always had a love for the water. I started lifeguarding, and I should have said this at the beginning. You might hear an accent. I am in Canada. So lifeguarding process is a little different in Canada. We, you know, have to go through Bronze Cross, Bronze Medallion, and then you do your NLS. So I had gotten all of my certifications and done lifeguarding, and then started offering to teach some kids in the backyard pool. I think one of the funniest things about my water story, though, and this is totally unrelated to pretty much anything about swimming itself, water is how I got my first puppy dog. So my dad told me if I could tread water without my hands for 45 minutes, he would buy me my first dog. So I did it for an hour and 15 minutes. And I asked him if I could have two dogs, and he told me to get out of the water. So that's the most fun part about my water story. So I am a pretty strong swimmer from the waist down. I'll say that. I was a breaststroker, and my leg strength really helped me get that dog.
You know, as our listeners have heard before, I had a little bit of a rocky road getting introduced to my first lifeguarding class, because I was the football weightlifter that Just thought it'd be cool to be a lifeguard and was not a super strong swimmer. And then we got to that
Yeah.
tread and I'm like, wait, you want me to actively drown in the lifeguarding class? That's great. Now I've learned to probably I could tread water for 45 minutes with no hands, but I will say, had someone offered me a puppy, I probably would have become much more proficient at it and really like the process a lot more.
You would have. And here's the best part. He was true to his word. I did get my first dog. So
It's
he
awesome.
let me
What,
he did buy my dog for me.
what kind of dog was it? I have to ask now.
So it's a miniature schnauzer. So we've had miniature schnauzers my whole life, and our first miniature schnauzer that I was able to get, we named him Harvey McGarvey.
Oh, that's cute. Oh, I love
So there
that.
you go. There's a fun part of the water story.
I love that. So, so how did you end up at British Swim School? Do you mind sharing that piece of your story?
No, nope, not at all. So I worked for the largest fitness company in Canada for 13 years. And I have fantastic memories, fond memories, great training. I was able to do a lot of fantastic courses and different roles with the company. And it was just one of those things where, it was starting to sort of run its course, and I was coming to the point where they were making some adjustments, and I wasn't sure. Everybody's always nervous about changing a career. It was my first real job at that point. So I'd been there for 13 years. But Rita Goldberg, who I mentioned earlier, she contacted the company I was working for and basically arranged a meeting. And at the time, I was overseeing the childcare program in the fitness club. So basically, that place where people drop their kids off, go for a workout. So they have to stay in the building. So it wasn't, a full. We called it child minding. It wasn't full daycare or anything.
Sure, yeah.
So that was part of my job. The other part of my job that they asked me to do, just kind of on a whim, knowing that I had been a swimmer and enjoyed swimming, I became the pool operations manager for the fitness company. And I think at the time we had 26 locations with pools. We actually had a couple of swim schools who were using our pools at the time. And so Rita reached out to the company I was working for, and we arranged this meeting. And she took me out for lunch. And she was there to pitch me so that the company I work for now, British Swim School, is a franchise company who repurposes pools. They use fitness pools, hotel pools, community centers. So she was taking me out for lunch and she wanted my pools. So she was, for lack of better term, whining and dining me and having this conversation about what British Swim School was and how she started it, and her big focus on water survival and her passion for drowning prevention, and just the way that her program was set up. So I had, of course, done some research and had this big conversation. And I remember sitting there being like, this company is really, even the whole drowning prevention side of things, it just made so much sense to me. And I just remember thinking like, this is such a purposeful business that I want to be a part of it. And I wanted our fitness company to make it work. And I wanted to allow kids the opportunity to get these lessons. Now, the funny part of this is that my joke used to be in my position that my two roles, so the childcare and the pools put together, would be a nightmare. Enter what I do now, which is now kind of the joke is I'm living my nightmare, which actually ended up being exactly what I meant to be doing. But she really did sell me on the company without meaning to sell me on the company. She was selling me on the company for a different purpose. But what ended up happening is I walked away from that thinking, if I could do a job that made the community stronger and made this education piece happen, how incredible would that be? So for a multitude of reasons, it didn't work out at that time with British Swim School and the company I was working for. But I heard afterwards that when I went to use the restroom during our meeting, she looked at the other person that was with us and she said, she's going to work for me one day. And he said, I don't know if you're going to get her, either to relocate to the States or, what that would look like. But just so fortunate that it ended up working out. So she definitely did reach out and it worked out, and I've never looked back. It's
Oh, that's
every day
awesome.
is amazing. So yeah, that's how I started.
So I want to ask you a question, and I
Yeah.
know this is going to sound super simplistic, but I think for our audience, and especially if any of our listeners listen to the last podcast we did with Angela Wild, who is a swim school owner,
Mm.
independent, has a kind of a boutique style approach.
Yep.
British Swim School is a franchise approach, right?
Mhm.
But it came up in that discussion, but I think it's important to reiterate this is, what is a swim school? Because not everywhere has swim schools, or, like I said in that podcast, in my area in rural Western Pennsylvania, we never had swim schools. And now I see a British swim school location near Pittsburgh. I see Goldfish has opened one. It's becoming much more popular, and really the whole industry has grown quite a bit. So I guess from
Yeah.
your perspective, can you tell our listeners who maybe are a little not confused, but maybe have never been exposed to a swim school, really what a swim school is?
Yeah, and as you were asking me the question, the first word that just popped into my mind was opportunity. And I see a swim school as an opportunity in so many different ways. So the way that we look at it, definitely from the British swim school side, the opportunity is that it's a small business model. So it's a small business, it's allowing somebody to essentially live out their dreams, be their own boss, have control of it, especially in an area where they might have a passion. So a lot of the owners that we've come through have been competitive swimmers or have had some sort of swim training and see the value in what it is. But we're also giving them the opportunity to build their own business and scale it however they might want to, and, pass it down to their children or whatever that looks like. The other side of it, of course, is the opportunity. So the opportunity side for me, I see it not just for young children. So we have a young adult program, we have an adult program, we have an adaptive aquatics program. So when I say opportunity, I mean, and it sounds cliche, but I'm going to go back to our mission statement, which is allowing everyone, no matter age or ability, the opportunity to be a safe and happy swimmer. Because there's such an incredible thing about swimming that you're competing against yourself, which anybody who's been a swimmer, I'm a internal compete against myself sports person. So I like to ski, I like to swim, I like to bike ride, I like to run. I'm beating my own time, I'm strengthening myself. I don't need to beat other people in a sport. It's kind of like that internal drive. So you have the opportunity to do something individual. You also have the opportunity to do something as a team, because there are those times, these kids are coming in, and whether they love to swim, not everybody's going to become a championship swimmer. We all know that. But maybe they meet some friends during the swimming. Maybe they're pushed to their limits a little bit more than they ever did. Maybe they have, an injury, or they do need an adaptive aquatics program where it's hard for them to do other sports. But we all know that the freedom of water gives people an opportunity that they wouldn't necessarily have. So a swim school, to me, it opens up this massive chance for not only people to be an owner themselves and have a passion for the business and give back, but you're also creating that opportunity. Now, here's the gravy on top of the sandwich. You're also helping with a world national issue of drowning. So even even if you're selfishly wanting to make money by opening a swim school, or even if selfishly your friends and family need swim lessons, so you open a swim school because you want to help them, what I think people don't even realize is how many times you're saving a life by just doing something that you're passionate about because you have that option for your community.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that I think we need to share more of, and we definitely try to do this, is that you can't count accidents that don't happen.
Yeah.
So, I know you and I have talked about this, and we've talked about it on lots of committees and lots of discussions, but, if people say to me, well, what's the benefit of swimming lessons? And like, how do you know? And I'm 100% fine to live in a world where I know that the work that I'm doing has saved lives. I'll never be able to tell you how many. I'm fine with that, but I know it's definitely been one. And wouldn't we all like to say we've at least saved one life? Like, I've been part of rescues when I was a lifeguard, even before I was in this industry. And, being lifeguard trained now and just having my eyes and even educating people at this point. So a swim school is just, now we have the opportunity to even educate people. So anybody even listening to this podcast is going to learn something today about how important it is to get people into swimming lessons. I also, not to drag it on, but I also think, like you said, we've seen a lot of success post-COVID, which has been fantastic. I think a swim school is now becoming necessity. It's not a nice to have, it's now a must have. And, we not joke about this great growth that we've all seen since COVID. And I think that, working with the United States Swim School Association, with other committees and coalitions, with you guys at National Drowning Prevention Alliance, it's just been really great to see that the messaging we've all been working so hard to get out has resonated.
Yeah.
And it's now happening. And it sounds bad, but like, the good problem that we're all trying to focus on right now is how to get more swim schools and more availability and more water time and more instructors and more, like, we're looking for it because the need is there. And like, what a great problem to have. It's frustrating at times, but what a great problem to have that we now have so many adults looking to learn how to swim so that they can enjoy the water and be able to save their child or a friend if needed, or know what to do. Like, what a great thing that we're seeing. So opportunity, how's that?
Well, and I love that word, because, kind of where I was going to go next is the idea of capacity in Learn to Swim. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to, make this a mirror of the discussion Angela and I had, but I like that kind of word opportunity here, right? Because one thing, and I said this on that podcast, I'm going to say it again, is there's not a one size fits all model with this, right? With Learn to Swim,
No.
because we have geographic difference, cultural differences, there's learning approaches, we have different styles of learners, all those types of things. And, oftentimes, it's not often I hear this, but occasionally I'll hear like, oh, well, we're scared that swim schools are opening in our territory because that's going to hurt our park and rec programs, or vice versa. And it is. I mean, look, let's call a spade, right? I mean, Learn to Swim, there's money to be made in the industry, right?
Yeah.
There's for-profit, there's nonprofits in the space, but whether it's going to support a community program or whether it's a franchise or a for-profit operation, I mean, either way, I love it, because one, not every model is going to fit every one person or every one community, right? So providing numerous access points. And I mean, the reality is right now, I don't think, and we can call this Adam's personal opinion, but I think I'm fairly confident in saying this, that I don't think we have the capacity in Learn to Swim to service every child and adult that wants or needs to learn to swim right now. So having the opportunity to grow that, in my mind, is wildly important.
Absolutely. And here's the thing too, like, a little competition is good for business, in that, having competition really forces you to look at your current program and your current policies and your current offerings to your customer base and make adjustments based on that. Like, we know that not every person is a Starbucks person and not every person is a Dunkin' person, like, having that competition. But the fact that we do know there's more people than there are available swim times right now. And like, it does break my heart when I hear of people who are like, there is no swimming around where I live, and we want to help, but we just don't have, the capacity to do it. So that is really part of the mission right now, even on British swim school sides. And I know for everyone in the Learn to Swim is, where are there locations that are, desperately looking for this help? They want it, they're looking for it. We just have to make it accessible. And I think, the more we can share, and that's part of, working with all these different committees. And people say that to me all the time, you go and present at United States Swim School Association, aren't you worried they're going to like steal your ideas? I'm like, no, I'm not worried that my ideas are going to be stolen. My job is to make sure that I'm providing our owners specifically, the information that's going to make them successful. But the other, spreading that information and the messaging isn't going to do any damage. What it's going to do is it's going to create that, friendly competition, but at the same time, allow people in areas that we may not be in to do well, and just create that need as much as possible. So I totally agree with you on that front. Like, it is that weird term, competition. Of course there's competition. Like, I'm not going to say that there isn't, but I just think that there's such a massive request for it right now, and that's evident in the information that we're getting.
Yeah.
So.
And, I want to stick along those lines of competition, but in a little bit of a reverse role. And, I don't know that I've ever shared this with you, Melissa, but it's something that some of my colleagues and I discuss quite a bit, who are with nonprofit organizations, is it's not often as much anymore, but I occasionally will get well, I can't believe that you talked to the American Red Cross, because aren't they competing against you? And it's like, Well, one, it takes me a second to get over the shock of that question, but it's like, well,
Right.
no, like we're partners in this mix, right? And sometimes people think like the YMCA and the American Red Cross don't work together because they're quote unquote competitors, right? And what I think some people are like astonished to find is actually no, we all do work together and we all learn from each other and share with each other because we are, many about the larger mission we're all in, right?
Right.
And I bring that up specifically here because that also exists in the for-profit side.
It does.
So many people think, well, oh no, they're competitors and they wouldn't be at the same room with each other. And then you go to something like the US Swim School Association and you're all there sharing. And I think
Yep.
that helps advance. And I guess my other piece to this is, you know, I think there's still a lot of advancement we can do in Learn to Swim, not just from how do we make our individual programs better and teaching approaches and learning objectives and all those, pieces, right? But we're all in this mission of water safety. We're all in this mission of Learn to Swim together. And I think we can still advance what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean, I know you and I have had those conversations numerous times.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because somebody could be talking, I could be on a call with what you would deem to be a competitor who says something that gives me another idea. So it's not about me stealing ideas or stealing like there's none of that. It's just like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I could put a twist on it. And I'm sure the same has happened vice versa. But I think your point about the working together, it might blow people's minds to know that I've been on calls with aquatots and goldfish and Big Blue, and we're brainstorming and thinking about things that are going to benefit the business side of it to allow us to keep expanding and keep offering things more and stay open. And I think, I've said this a lot, and don't get me wrong, I didn't love COVID for lots of reasons, but one of the silver linings of COVID was that there was this true compatibility and true people working together, just understanding the need to stay open and the need to keep allowing people to come into swimming lessons, because we were all, bottom line, so concerned about the drowning numbers. That was what we were seeing. We were seeing people starting to vacation differently and starting to try new sports, which they hadn't done before because it was easier to stay close to home. And water was safe at that time. Safe, I'll use some air quotations, because you don't know what you don't know. So I think that was definitely part of the mind shift for people, knowing they needed to get into swim lessons. Was we did see, the unfortunate spike of drownings in certain areas and double drownings happening because people were trying to save their friends or family and just not having that understanding. So, I think that silver lining of COVID and the relationships that were built, and those numerous Zoom calls that we were all on trying to figure out what the heck we were going to do to keep the doors open or get them back open. I do think that was a huge opportunity, even in the for-profit sector. Yeah. So yeah, it's huge. But even to add on to what you're saying, and I know we've briefly chatted about this, I just see a massive opportunity now to focus more in the Learn to Swim side on the child development side. Like, we really are seeing kids in those perfect child development years to really make an impact on them. And it's one of those things where, I think we have the capacity to do it. It's just really thinking through how do we make that impact and help that child development side, because there's a lot of things changing, as we know, in the school systems and how busy parents are these days. And, we talk about, technology changing. And so I've just been really thinking a lot about, how we can advance the Learn to Swim, not just on the programming side and our offerings, but like even more on the child development side, and really understanding how we can make that impact as well.
Well, we can't say it enough, right? I mean, learning to swim is an amazing gift for a number of reasons, because it's, one, obviously our main concern is safety, right? It empirically makes people safer around the water if they are water competent, right? And then, you transition that into health and fitness, right? And whether it's just simple recreation, enjoying time with your family around the water, whether you're using it to stay, healthy and fit at all ages, it's one of the very few activities you could do from birth to literally being in a retirement home and needing to stay mobile. But then there's also the competitive side, right? And I think that's where Learn to Swim sets, our future Olympians up for success, right? So, I mean, I don't know that there's many things that parents can do with their kids that gives them that many opportunities, to use that word again,
Yeah.
at such an early age.
Yeah, it opens up so many doors and it could go so many different ways. We love hearing stories about, our students who come in terrified of the water. They're 3, 4 years old. Think about what a 3 or 4 year old has been told before they come to their first swimming lesson. Don't go near the water. Don't go near the deep end. Don't talk to strangers. Never go without your floaties or a life jacket. All fine things to say as a parent. Obviously, you want to make sure that your children are safe, but then you bring them to their first swim lesson. They walk into this massive pool. It's really loud. They're not wearing floaties or a life jacket a lot of the time during swimming lessons because we want them to feel that freedom in the water. And our main focus is obviously teaching them how to float. That's the number one goal for British Swim School side. But that's why our program, we really focus on building the foundation of water acclimation, making sure that they're comfortable in the water, because if you're comfortable and you understand the water and you have a good relationship with the water, you're more likely to retain the information for what comes next, which our hope is to make sure that they're not just learning it and forgetting it, or they're not learning out of fear, but they're going to keep that information and actually develop a passion for the sport one day. So you never know what's going to happen. They're either going to come in and they're going to go through the lessons because their parents are making them do it and then they're done, or all of a sudden you've actually got somebody who you're like, I never thought they'd be a swimmer. They were terrified of the water when I first brought them here, but we've given them that opportunity to basically fall in love with something that they didn't even know they were going to enjoy. So yeah, it's just a really good place to be, to watch how that progresses and hear those stories from parents who they're just completely surprised that
Yeah.
their child is loving the swimming side of things, and they thought they were going to have to force them to come to swimming lessons. So it's just
So,
incredible to hear those types of stories for sure.
well, and one other thing that not to, belabor this on the benefits of learn to swim, but I think the other thing too,
Right.
and I know you feel pretty seriously about this too, is that's an awesome time to be able to also educate their parents and caregivers on water safety.
Yes.
Because, and I know this, and many of our listeners do, the reality is the misinformation that is out there about water safety and drowning is so rampant.
Yep.
To be able to clear up some of that with parents during swim lessons, we want the message, yes, coming from the pediatrician. Yes, we want it from the hospital and the police officer and the public health folks. And we
Sure.
want that message coming from all angles to the parents. But if all of those other angles failed and now they're at the swim lesson with their child, that's an awesome place to be able to get that information accurately conveyed to them.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I'm gonna say to you right now, I'm sure you feel the same, but how frustrating any television show or any movie is where they're splashing and their shoulders are up out of the water and they're able to move their arms. Like if you're not able to swim, or if you're in panic mode, or if you're drowning, you're not able to swim with half of your body out of the water. You're not able to tread water that strong. If you can tread water that strong, you're probably not at risk of drowning, like they kind of depict it. Of course, we've all talked about, it's silent, you're not going to hear it. But I think, again, your listeners know this, but the opportunity to educate these parents, and one of the things that we do, we run what we call a survival week 4 times a year, where the kids come in wearing their clothing and they get to feel, the weight of their clothing and in a controlled environment. And, we try to make it fun so that they're
Yeah.
learning something that's safe, but they're having fun at the same time, knowing that they're likely going to retain it. But just as important, it's how do you know what a good life jacket fits? We talk to our parents about that. What's backyard water safety? Like, I went to my sister's pool and she had a toddler at the time, and she had a table and chairs beside the fence. And if I hadn't have started this job, I don't know that I would have ever noticed it. So, there's a reason for everything, all of those things. But I said to her, I said, your daughter can climb on that chair and climb on that table and get over your fence. And she just looked at me and thought, she felt like a bad mom for not realizing that. And I said, I'm not saying this to make you feel like that. I'm
Yep.
saying this because that's the reality of it. Unfortunately, we see things on surface level. You've got a gate around your pool. It's very safe. But it's these outside barriers that a lot of people don't know. So the opportunity to educate parents, and the amount of people, when I tell them, 88% more likely to be successful in a drowning incident or a water incident if you have a formal swim lesson. If you told me 88% more likely anything, I'd probably do it, because that's a pretty high statistic, right? Like
Yeah.
that's pretty up there. So I just think, when we say that stat, or that more than 75% of drownings are happening during non-swim times,
Yeah.
you're not prepared to be swimming when the majority of drownings are happening. And even those two simple statistics that we say all the time, the more people we can share that with. So, I encourage the listeners right now, don't assume that your friends and family know those stats, and really just say, like, there is no reason to it. There's no timing. There's no, it's going to happen at this time or this time. Like, it's an accident, but we all know that there's preventative measures, and that's what we're really trying to get out there. So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, because I'm sure people listening know these things, but my message would be, don't assume, because even just looking at that pool with my sister, it was just such an eye-opening moment for her that she had just never thought about. And that's okay. I just am happy I was able to let her know.
We need some positive affirmation now and then, so it's good to hear people
Yeah.
making sure we're all thinking the same way. I want to ask you, this could be a little change of topics, but I want to ask you a little bit about, I know you're a new board member with the U.S. Swim School Association, and
Yeah.
can you share a little bit about the association? I know it's not new, it's been around for a long time. USSA and NDPA have been affiliated with each other for a long time. But I know there was a recent update regarding some of the membership opportunities. So I want to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, so very exciting at the United States Swim School, opening up, I guess, just even more doors for people in the industry. So looking at for-profit, non-for-profit, basically what we want to do is we want to bring everyone into the mix. We want to have that healthy conversation, the healthy sharing. We want, from their perspective, what's been going on in their world, as well as what's been going on in our world. And I think more than anything, we talked a lot about opportunity, but swim schools to me are just this massive community, and it's just so interesting. And being part of the United States Swim School Association, and just kind of using the pun, diving into the needs of these small business owners, whether, you work for a company like British Swim School, which is small business owners as part of a franchise. They're all small business owners, right?
Yep.
They own their own business. They're supported by the franchise. But then you have other companies where they are, starting their own small businesses and opening multiple pools. But just having more people come in into the association is just such a win-win. And it was, such a huge win for the association. Everyone is really excited about it. And our focus right now is just really looking at the offerings. So, recently we did an HR webinar that went over really, really well, because, we wear a lot of hats in the swim school industry. So no matter if you're for profit, not for profit, no matter what your kind of outlook is, HR is changing pretty much by the day. So if we can, as an association, be providing people information on what's going on in hiring, what's going on in the world of, what our staff are looking for as far as culture, what's going on in any parts of the discussion side of, reprimanding people. Like, it's interesting. And now that the association is open to so many more people, it's just this massive opportunity on both sides. And I would say, being part of the association right now, we're really looking at getting people involved in, the conferences. And, like, I love going to the NDPA AOIP one, being a member of the United States Swim School, going to the spring workshop and the main conference. It's so much more than obviously the speakers. I love to do the presentations. I love to be there and hear other people's presentations. But these conversations that are happening, and the friendships that are made, like, it's just incredible what you get to see. And I'm so pumped about the change, and that we're going to start to see more and more people coming in. And, with the good, and I'm not going to say that being challenged is bad, but I'm assuming that we're probably going to learn some new things that we probably need to be looking at in a different light. And that's a good thing too. Like, it's not a bad thing to be having people come in and asking for different types of topics, and asking us kind of having to shift what we're doing to fill those needs. So Yeah, thanks for asking about that. It's a really exciting time for United
Well,
States
and
Swim School for sure.
the reason I always have a reason for why I ask things.
Of course.
The reason I wanted to ask you that, and make people aware that these opportunities are expanding with U.S. Swim School Association, is what I notice. Not just in the swim school world, or I think this is something across Learn to Swim in all capacities, is there are professional development opportunities out there. There is a network of support and education and advancements that's out there. Sometimes, whether you're a small business owner or you're just a lonely swim instructor that's trying to do your best day in, day out,
Right.
sometimes you can feel like you're on an island all on your own. And
Yeah.
I know you're going to agree with this. I mean, your professional training, your professional advancement, it's really never complete in any field, but especially Learn to Swim. There's always something you can do differently, or try differently, or new, or learn something new. To have that support network and to have the opportunity for professional development and Learn to Swim world, I think is going to be invaluable moving forward. And I'm thrilled that the association is taking that step.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just to exactly reiterate your point, I've definitely seen some people's faces and like sighs of relief when somebody says something they've been concerned about, but they just didn't know that it was also with other people.
Yeah.
And so even just hearing, yeah, I struggle with that as well, or I've been feeling the same way, even if it's one or two people that you meet that you take that from, like I said, it's those friendships and relationships that continue on, and the ideas that get bounced around, because we're also going through some interesting times right now with people who are, looking to get out of the industry, and there's lots of options out there for people, and sometimes they don't realize that. And that's why we want you to come. We want you to see the opportunities. We want you to meet the people and, share what your vision is for your business, and let us help you problem solve that, if you will. You
Yep.
don't have to be alone. You don't have to feel like, we're going to make you sign something and give us your secrets and your programming. That's not what this is about. It's really more of a high level, let's have conversations, and you put into it what you're comfortable, you take out of it what you will. And like you said, and what I've said is, I am very excited to see what happens. I'll be 3 years on the board. So within the next 3 years, we've got some big goals. We've got some lofty goals, I'll say, but we've got, a kick. I don't know if I can say kick ass, but whatever. We've got a kick ass team of ladies who are willing to make it happen. And it's just, it's exciting.
I do want to draw attention to that, because I think that's also a unique distinction, right now. I don't know if this is the first time ever, but I recently saw that this term of the board of directors for the U.S. Swim School Association is fully female.
Fully female. It is. Yeah. For whatever reason, it worked out that way. I have heard that it's the second time it's happened. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's the second time it's happened. But yeah, it worked out that way. And, I'll be honest, for our first meeting, I was like, I wonder how this is going to go, because, we got a lot of type A personalities and, a lot of, women in a room trying to get stuff done, but just really impressed with this group and really looking forward to everybody. Everybody's really focused on the association itself and the growth and what we can offer and how we can expand. And none of us are afraid of change, which I think is just a really good place for us to be in right now, because,
that's
what is it? Bob Dylan, the times are changing. I think that's the Bob Dylan thing.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, though, I mean, that's a recipe for success, because, and I want to just pick up on, because I think you just said something really important, which is, and I see this all the time with my board at NDPA, and I sometimes forget to shine the light on this, is it's so important when you're representing, on a board of directors, you're serving in that fiduciary role as a director, that you kind of put aside your own personal stuff, and you remember you're there for the mission and vision of the organization in which you're serving. And I think that naturally happens a lot with NDPA, because we always often start off our board meetings with a reminder of our mission and vision and why we're doing what we're doing. But I think that is incredible, because if you don't have that, it's really hard to make progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what also makes me feel really great is everyone who's part of the association has to meet a certain criteria, which means we know that they're there because they believe in the goals of the association. You know, they believe in safety, they believe in education and ongoing education and the things that the association stands for. And I guess it's pretty incredible to be surrounded by people who see things the same way. And I don't know how to describe that feeling, but there really isn't a better feeling than, you know, when people are thanking you for getting up and speaking in front of them and thanking you for sharing your experiences and your knowledge. And it's just, yeah, it's a pretty great fantastic association, but a great place to be in when you're surrounded by that. So
Totally. Well, I know we are running up on time, so I'm going to give you our famous last question on the podcast, which is I am handing you a magic water safety wand, and you can change one thing, big or small, in water safety. What would you change?
Oh, it's such a question. And then there's the surface level stuff. So I would say the biggest thing I would change is actually taking on something that is already happening in certain places, which is, I guess, forcing the hand on the education side.
Yeah.
So really just upping all the things that we know and making it more of a consistent message to the people who need it. So I'm not sure if you've mentioned this on the podcast, but another big win with United States Swim School Association recently, working with the New York Coalition and New York Water Safety, was that there's a video that's going to be shared now at the hospital before people are going, just so that parents understand the importance of putting their kids in a swim lesson. So, you know, it's continuing the education. So if you gave me a magic wand and I could make sure that every new parent just had the facts and had the information, my number one thing, I guess I have two that kind of tie. One of them we've already talked about is the misinformation about drowning. So one day, Adam, we're going to go on a mission to like change TV and movies and like outlaw them showing that. That's like my number. That's going to happen. We're going to make that happen. My other thing, I guess, is the magic wand of like, I just don't want people to say, I wish I would have known. I wish we could never hear that again. I wish that, you know, one of the most impactful things for me every year going to National Drowning Prevention Alliance conference is meeting the families who are there. And one of the things, and probably the thing that breaks my heart, is new families who are there. And that line that we hear, I wish I would have known. If I could do anything, my magic wand would make that phrase never, ever happen again. I never, ever want somebody to say, I wish I would have known. I just want them to know. So that would be my magic wand.
Well, couldn't agree more with that. And I think we are on the same mission there. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us and allowing our listeners to learn a little bit more about you, British Swim School, and the U.S. Swim School Association. And thank you for just championing water safety all year long. I say this about all of our guests, but I know you are meeting the true definition of a water safety champion. So thank you for all you do to keep kids safe and adults safe around the water. Join us on our next episode of the NDPA Water Safety Champion podcast, where we'll be learning more about other water safety champions out there doing great work. Until then, stay safe, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you then.